actually in a bad mood because inflation has come down to 2%, Mr. Speaker, and it ruins his little just inflation slogan.
The just inflation tagline works now better than ever.
Trudeau and Pierre faced off against each other for their first Wednesday head-to-head debate in question period, and given how the summer went for the Liberals, it went about as well as you might expect. And given that a secret report was finally released about the full impact the carbon taxes had on the economy, Pierre wasn't going to let Trudeau off the hook at all.
Let's take a look.
The NDP leader sold out Canadians to sign onto a costly coalition that doubled the debt, doubled the housing costs, sent 2 million people to food banks and 1,800 tent encampments. He voted 24 times for the carbon tax. And since he did his dramatic video, he's refused to answer 40 times whether he'd vote non-confidence. Now that he knows that the Bloc is going to keep the Liberals in power, he'll stand up and claim that he's voting against. Mr. Speaker, why won't the NDP stand up when it counts so that we can end this costly coalition and elect a common sense government?
Before the Prime Minister takes a card, I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from New Westminster, Burnaby, please, to only take the microphone when his voice is recognized.
Which member is that?
Peter Julian.
Interesting. He's not usually too rowdy in question period.
Looks like the NDP is getting offended of being called out on their, ridiculous partnership and hypocrisy with the Liberals. Yeah, I'm sure you're not going to like it, but guess what? That's what you did. That's what you signed on for. And now you're going to pretend nothing happened.
Well, that's it. They didn't think of or didn't care about the consequences that a coalition with the Liberals would have for them, especially considering the Liberals' disastrous policies. They just thought that, we'll kind of skirt by this and support the Liberals and we'll come out of it when we want and everything will be fine. No. Canadians see you guys as just as bad, if not worse, than the Liberals for supporting them while we've suffered the past 2 years.
Oh, and this is why Pierre is bringing up all of the specific numbers to ensure that everybody understands what the effects of these policies were. And I also find it interesting that since Pierre's last talk about this, he had stated before it was 31 times that Jagmeet hadn't answered the question. Well, apparently since then it's been 9 additional times that he hasn't answered the question. And yet it's 2 out of 3 days that he doesn't appear in question period. Maybe this was the time where Jagmeet was, mouthing off to somebody outside, so he was late. I don't know.
Who said it?
Somebody behind me said that.
Was it me? Was it you? No. You sure? If it was me, I'd admit it, buddy. Was it you or not? If it was me, I'd admit it. What'd you say then?
But either way, a leader is supposed to be in question period with his party, especially the first week back to the fall session.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we see that the Leader of the Opposition enjoys his political games, enjoys chasing after his own political interests, and has not a second to care for Canadians' interests. He's actually in a bad mood because inflation has come down for Canadians. He doesn't care about their interests. That's why we're going to continue to deliver for Canadians. We're going to continue to step up with investments that are going to support Canadians, fight climate change, and build a brighter future for everyone.
See, if everything was as great as Trudeau was saying, then Pierre would look like a loon.
But it's not that great.
Right. And all of Canadians would be a cheering throng at the Liberals' door. Like, oh, yay, you guys are so amazing. Interest rates are down. I'm just going to ignore that costs are already extremely high because of the previous inflation that happened. So, yay. No, that's not how this works, and that's why everybody is so ticked off and are yelling at politicians.
Well, and additionally, the cost for essentials is still going up.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this costly NDP carbon tax coalition, what's happened? What's up? Taxes up, costs up, crimes up, time's up. What Canadians need is hope. By choosing a common sense government that axes taxes, builds homes, fixes the budget, and stops the crime so they can earn powerful paychecks and pensions that buy affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods protected by a strong military. Why can't we bring it home now?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, that little performance shows just how much the Leader of the Opposition loves his slogans, but actually doesn't put forward any.
I'm going to ask, as I'd asked a previous member before, to please not take the floor unless they're recognized. I'm going to ask all members, please, to allow the member to. I'll ask Prime Minister, Right Honourable Prime Minister, to start from the top.
Boy, Mr. Speaker, point out the performance of the Leader of the Opposition, and his colleagues get all upset because they know that he doesn't actually care about Canadians. He doesn't care about the programs we're delivering. He doesn't care about stepping up to support Canadians. He's actually in a bad mood because inflation has come down to 2%, Mr. Speaker, and it ruins his little just inflation slogan. He is so upset because he's cared about his own interests and not the interests of Canadians. We're going to stay focused on the things that matter for people while he spins little rhymes and tosses out his slogans. We'll take this seriously like we always have.
You guys broke this country in the first place.
And now they're clapping for it.
Right. It's like, oh, inflation's down. That's great. What that means is that the rate at which everything is increasing in price, it's not as fast as it was a year ago. It's still going up.
And, we talked about this on our live stream when we were going through this Globe and Mail article, that the reporter had spoken to many of the, insider liberals in the party. And they were talking about the fact that it seems like the senior officials are just delusional about the polling, delusional about the by-election results, and delusional about if they can, actually turn this around. And you're starting to actually see this delusion on display here, because they may actually believe that they're doing a great job. And that's the scary part about this.
Well, I think the scarier part is when you go into these very left-leaning places like Reddit, for example, and people are parroting the exact same points like they believe it.
And they don't even understand it.
No, because you'll see people in the comments be like, well, actually, that's not true. Like, here's some evidence to refute that. And then the original person, the person parroting left-leaning points, keeps going on in that manner. And it's just like, what is going on here? I know nobody wants to believe bad things, that bad things are happening in this country, that bad things are happening to them. But all you have to do is look around and go, things were not like this 9 years ago under Stephen Harper. It's not right that things are the way they are. We need to fix this. We as citizens need to fix this, and we need to demand that our elected officials take this seriously and fix it.
Well, and the first step in solving a problem is realizing you have one, and Canada's biggest problem right now is this Liberal government.
If anyone had any doubt, it's definitely Wednesday. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the just inflation tagline works now better than ever. He can try to call himself Rocky Balboa and play fight songs to aggrandize himself as the star. But the people lined up at food banks, 2 million of them every month, know better. The people who are living in the 1,800 Ontario tent encampments know better. The 35 homeless encampments in Halifax, the people there know better. They know that we need to fire this costly carbon tax coalition so we can elect a common sense government that will bring it home for them.
Rule number 1, don't use somebody else's slogans to try and impeach them, especially if it's Pierre, because you walked right into that one. Like, yeah.
I mean, all the government really needs to do to stay in power is make the people happy. It's so simple. Like, when you implement something like a carbon tax and tell people, well, it's for your own good. Oh, but you'll get more money back than you're paying. And people are saying, hey, this isn't working. I'm worse off than I am before. Groceries are more expensive because everything's brought to the grocery store by a truck. I'm not getting more money back than I was before, than I'm paying into the system, I suppose. We don't want this carbon tax. And then you're like, well, we think you should have it for your own good. Like, that's a very quick way to lose your voter base.
Well, and they keep saying we've been listening to Canadians,
but they haven't.
They change nothing. So, obviously, who's listening to Canadians? Obviously, Pierre builds a platform. He goes up in the polls, and Trudeau continues to do the same thing. Goes down in the polls. Goes out, listens to Canadians, doesn't change anything, continues to go down in the polls.
Well, and listen to what Canadians are telling, like these Liberals that are knocking on their doors. I would vote for you, but Justin Trudeau is your leader, therefore I'm not voting for you. Or I would vote for you, except I don't like Trudeau, so therefore I'm not voting for you. So what's the message there? I don't want Justin Trudeau to be Prime Minister anymore. And what is the Liberal Party doing? Nothing. Absolutely nothing about it.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, he sure loves to declaim about vulnerable people and perform his empathetic supposed concern. But the reality is he is using vulnerable people for his own political gains. If he actually cared about people, he wouldn't have voted against dental care for 700,000 seniors. He wouldn't have voted against a child school food policy that's helping families with $800 worth of groceries a year. He's not making the investments in Canadians. He wants to cut programs, make Canadians suffer, so he can sit in the big chair.
The big chair is the Speaker's chair, isn't it?
Well, that's the biggest chair. But this is this is the thing. He's now trying to talk down to Pierre, like, oh, I'm the man in the big chair, and well, dude, where do you think these vulnerable people come from? They didn't just spring up overnight.
No, they come from our communities, right?
Well, and they arose because of bad policy.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to get at. That, these policies that the Liberal government has implemented have failed the vulnerable people in our communities. And what is the Trudeau government doing about it? Nothing. They're just turning a blind eye.
Well, and this is the problem when Trudeau tries to ad-lib. He goes, like, we knew this was coming. We knew that he was going to get rattled with Pierre coming at him because he cannot stand in front of him and debate him. He can't do it, which is ironic because this is the drama guy, the drama teacher. He should be in probably the best position to be able to improvise and talk on his feet, but sadly no, and makes you wonder, how well did the kids do under Trudeau when he was teaching?
April 30th. 2014, life in Canada, home of the world's most affluent middle class, the New York Times. Yet, today, almost a decade after that NDP Liberal Prime Minister has been in what he calls the big chair, Canada's GDP per capita is actually down, while the American one is up 19%. His carbon taxes are strangling growth. How could the solution possibly be to quadruple the tax to 61 cents a litre and send more jobs and businesses south?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we know the Leader of the Opposition doesn't believe in climate change and doesn't believe in putting more money in the pockets of Canadians with a Canada carbon rebate. How many wildfires, hurricanes, droughts are going to go after Canadians' lives and livelihoods before he understands you can't have a plan for the economy unless you have a plan for the environment?
Okay, so we've debunked this I don't know how many times. But just on the fact that you're spending $200 million on government employees to manage the carbon tax, you cannot then say, well, it's revenue neutral, and not even that. It is, revenue positive. Like, that's not possible.
No, it doesn't make sense at all. And if you check out our interview that we did a little while ago with Franco Terrazzano from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, you'll see he debunks it too.
Yeah, and they are a nonpartisan organization. So they don't care if it's a conservative, NDP, NDP,
NDP will never be government.
or liberal government. They don't care. What they care about is saving money for Canadians, and that is their main goal. So, it's not that they're pro-conservative; they're just anti-tax. That's what their main purpose is for. So. This is just ridiculous, and I love this saying: you can't have a plan for the economy unless you have a plan for the environment. Well, isn't that actually the reverse? You can't have a plan for the environment unless you have a plan for the economy. That seems to be more actually relevant, because you can have a plan for the economy and completely ignore the environment. You absolutely can do that, but you can't do the reverse. So maybe you better break out your thesaurus and actually understand what words mean.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He doesn't have a plan for either, as evidenced by the fact that he came completely unglued and started spitting out personal insults and crying, "Liar, liar, liar," on a radio station the other day when he learned that I had pointed to his own government report, which showed that his carbon tax will blow a $25 to $30 billion hole in our GDP. This was from a report that his government tabled in the House of Commons. If, in fact, his government is lying about the true cost of the carbon tax to our economy, then what is the true cost?
Well, and let's just take a look at something, shall we? This is a government report. So this is from Statistics Canada. And what this shows is Canada's year-over-year national greenhouse emissions. So the interesting thing is, if you notice, between 2012 and 2014, it had actually crested under the Stephen Harper government and started to decline. At which point, when the Trudeau government took over, it started to increase again, which doesn't make sense. Because what about your environmentally green policies? And then you see that it took a major drop once it hit COVID. Well, if nobody's driving around and nothing is being produced, then you can't exactly, have a high carbon output. But then look what happened. In 2021 and 2022, everything started to increase again. So this is the story of the carbon tax under the Trudeau government. They keep saying it's reducing emissions, but emissions continue to go up.
Well, to be fair, the population continues to go up. If it's Canadians who are causing greenhouse gases through our behaviors, driving to work, driving to the grocery store, driving to the mall, whatever, why do they keep bringing in more Canadians to do those things?
Well, and there you go. And here's something else to take a look at. So we had found the report, and this is a narrative on that from our friends at the Canadian Tax Federation. So it actually demonstrates that from the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report, which they did not want to release, and the Conservatives and other parties were actually saying, why are you not releasing this? And they're saying, well, there's sensitive information in there. Yes, sensitive to the Liberal government. So what they actually found is that if they took the carbon tax away, there would have been a $25 billion boon to Canada's GDP. But with the carbon tax in place, it's actually handcuffing the Canadian economy to the tune of $25 billion by 2030. So this is the price. This is the price of their ridiculous tax. And, make no mistake, this tax is to give the government revenue, 100%.
Oh, absolutely it is. They can say it's revenue neutral all they want, but even the figure that, again, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation found is that it costs $200 million in bureaucracy to administrate. That's not revenue neutral.
Well, and if it really was, why are they increasing it? That's the question you have to ask.
Well, why are they increasing it without having a viable alternative available?
No, but just why are they increasing it? They are trying to say that this is reducing emissions and it's putting more money in Canadians' pocket. Okay, so then why are you increasing it? If it's working, why are you increasing it?
Because it's not working, and it has nothing to do with emissions and everything to do with tax revenue.
100%.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer demonstrated that 8 out of 10 Canadian families do better with the Canada carbon rebate every 3 months than the cost of the price on pollution. And on top of that, Canadians know the price on pollution has brought down our emissions faster than any other G7 country at the same time as it is supporting Canadians in the middle class and working hard to join it. We're going to continue to fight climate change and invest in a strong economy for the future, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to deny climate change and cut programs and services that Canadians rely on.
Where has it gone down, Justin? Like, where has it gone down? The only time it went down is when people were forced to stay in their homes. But whenever the economy returns to normal and, people aren't forced to be locked in their homes, emissions start to go up. So you're full of it. You are absolutely full of it when you say, oh, this is bringing down, emissions. No, and no. Because people still need to drive to work. People still need to drive anywhere in Canada. Canada is a big country.
It's vast and it's cold. We need to heat our homes too.
And we have lots of rural communities. So you're basically saying, well, everybody in the city, they're all safe from the carbon tax, except for heating their homes. But it's on the backs of rural Canadians, the ones that actually drive this country with farms and other services that make our country succeed. They're the people that actually have to pay for this.
But even the Canadians in the cities are not safe from the carbon tax.
Right.
Nobody's safe because, again, we live in a city and all of the goods and services and things that we buy, they are trucked in, on trains and trucks and boats and whatever. I mean, even if you go to the nail salon and get your nails done, where are all those materials coming from? Everything that we use is brought into this country either on a boat or a plane or it's coming from another part of the country and it's getting here on a train or a truck.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, you can't sit in the big chair if you can't read your own government documents. Environment and Climate Change Canada carbon pollution pricing data tabled in this House by his government said that it will cost between $25 and $30 billion in lost GDP when this tax is implemented. A further document tabled by his Environment Minister on Carbon Tax 2 says there will be another $9 billion hole for a total of between $34 and $40 billion. Now he screams that this is all lies. Again, if his government documents are lying, what is the true cost of the carbon tax to our economy?
And this is checkmate, because this is coming from literally his own government. And, remember we were told by Katie Telford?
Of course, the Prime Minister reads any documents he does receive.
So he should have read this.
I don't believe her for a second.
Right? Or maybe they kept something from the Prime Minister.
There is nothing that is ever kept from the Prime Minister.
Okay, so nothing's kept from the Prime Minister, and he reads everything that he's given. So what is it, Justin? Because this is your report. You fought to keep it secret, so you should know what's in it. If it's not true, what's the number?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, every Canadian, except perhaps the Canadians in the Conservative Party of Canada, understand that the costs of inaction on climate change will be catastrophic.
And here he goes again. So basically, if you are a member of the Conservative Party of Canada, you're a terrible person, you believe in conspiracy theories, and you're not a real Canadian.
But it's beyond being a member of the party. It's Canadians who support the Conservatives.
But that's what I mean. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, whether you're a card-carrying member or not. If you can consider yourself a member of the Conservative Party without paying the membership if you just support them and believe in what they do. And Trudeau's trying to, again, divide Canadians. Gee, I wonder why people are so pissed off with you.
Well, he can keep guilt tripping as much as he wants, but I'm still going to be voting for Pierre.
But he's not fighting climate change. He's driving production out of Canada to more polluting for foreign jurisdictions, rather than our common sense plan to green projects that produce more energy around the world that displace emissions. That's a common sense approach. And he still won't answer the question, though, on the full cost of his 2 carbon taxes. I've cited government documents tabled in this House that say that it will total between $34 and $40 billion per year in lost GDP and jobs. If his government documents are wrong, then what is the true loss of GDP as a result of his 61-cent a litre carbon tax?
And right there, Pierre just destroys the entire narrative that the Liberal government is trying to use here. They're saying, well, we're fighting climate change by putting a tax on Canadians. And Pierre's right. He's like, okay, so all you're doing is disincentivizing businesses from actually investing here and setting up shop here and creating jobs here. You're sending it to more polluting countries like the United States, China, and India. And what does that do? Well, that creates more pollution. But if you then turn it around and say, okay, well, let's take the tax off and then incentivize green energy projects, that's going to keep jobs in Canada, that's going to generate more green energy, and it's going to allow us to help other nations that rely on dirtier forms of fuel like coal to get off of coal and onto something that's more environmentally friendly like liquefied natural gas.
Or nuclear. Nuclear is the greenest, cleanest, and safest form of energy we have. Nuclear's problem is that it has a bad PR problem. We actually had somebody in the comments come after me saying that, haven't you ever heard of 3 Mile Island and Fukushima and Chernobyl? Yeah, I have. And with any technology, if we stopped using it like the second something bad happens, then we could miss out on all the positives. I mean, think of how many car accidents happen in this province, in Ontario, every single day. There's over 65 fatal and non-fatal, but people get injured, accidents in cars every single day in this province. Do you still drive a car? Do you still sit in a car? Of course. I mean, some things can happen. People do die in car accidents, but it doesn't stop you from using a car. What it does is incentivizes car manufacturers to build better, safer cars. Canada has the safest nuclear facilities in the world. And we should be proud of that, and we should be using them.
Well, that's the thing. When other countries are having problems with their nuclear plants, who do they call?
Canada.
They call us. So, and Canadian nuclear engineers went over to Fukushima after the tsunami hit, and they actually evaluated the nuclear reactors over there and found that if they were actually using our CANDU reactors, nothing would have happened.
Right, because we have the best in the world, and we need to be proud of that.